Welcome to MORE-VILLE, ORVILLE, the podcast that reviews the ORVILLE. I'm your co-host, Michael, and I'm joined by G.I. Jolie.
That's me.
Woo! And Champion.
How you doing, guys?
All right, we are...
We're okay.
It's great to be back again.
Yeah. Feels like it's been a while. We are drawing near to the end of the second season here. We're about to review another good episode. This one's called Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. And Champion is Mr. Memory, and he's going to tell us what this one is about.
Let me see if I can remember what this one is about through the haze of various dab pen sessions. This opens up, I believe, as our senior staff are having a few drinks in 10 Forward, and they're sort of reminiscing a little bit about Ed and Kelly's exploits back when they were dating many years ago. And Kelly and Ed, they were drinkers back in the day, and they'd get in all sorts of shenanigans. And they have a few drinks at 10 Forward before, heading back to their quarters. And Ed talks to Kelly about how he really misses those days and how they had so much good times together and how much he wishes he could kind of go back and revisit that relationship. And he reiterates to Kelly that, he's still open to the idea of them rekindling their relationship if that's something that she's into, but she's standing firm and she doesn't think that it's appropriate, and, justifiably so. So they part company. Now, we join Lamar and Isaac in the science lab, where Isaac is playing around with the anti-banana ray from the first season. And they're using it to, trying to mess around with some sort of, time displacement and that sort of thing. And Kelly comes down to check out what's going on, and impressed with all of everyone's work, but then something shakes the ship, and there's some kind of calamity, and she's got to run up to the bridge. And then Lamar leaves too to take care of something. Isaac's shutting everything down, and he turns and he looks, and there's a woman there with him, and it looks just like Kelly, only just a few years younger. And she doesn't seem to have any idea where she is or what she's doing, and Isaac radios the bridge and says there's something wrong with Commander Grayson, and Commander Grayson's already on the bridge, and she says, no, I'm fine, I'm right here. So, intruder alert, we don't know who this person is. Turns out, though, that it is Kelly, and they run some genetic scans, and it's really her, and she's about 7 years younger, and they surmise that this anti-banana ray has somehow yanked old Kelly from the past and brought her to the ORVILLE in present time. And the thinking there is that Kelly was standing closest to the device when this whatever happened that shook the ship, and she had been reminiscing about back in the day and dating Ed, and the Kelly that is suddenly there had just gone on a first date with Ed the night before in her timeline. So they don't know what to do. They give her quarters and they try and figure out, if they can send her back, if this is a new timeline, what's going on, if they have to keep her in the dark about everything. And they tell her some things, and regular Kelly, the one that we know, doesn't seem to remember any of this happening. So it seems as though it's okay that they can tell her what's going on. It doesn't seem like it's going to change the timeline. So she kind of becomes a member of the crew. She's a lieutenant when she was yanked from her time, so she's a lieutenant here now. She bonds with Tala, who is eager to have a new friend. And the young Kelly starts to integrate herself in with the crew, and she becomes friends with a lot of Kelly's friends, and this starts to cause some problems when young Kelly starts telling embarrassing stories that older Kelly would rather sort of be left in the past or not shared with her crewmates, because she needs to maintain this respectability. She can't be sort of regarded by the crew as the town drunk. Now, Ed and young Kelly end up striking up a little relationship. Young Kelly approaches Ed, and it's revealed to young Kelly that Ed and Kelly had been married and they divorced. So she asks if it's really over. She asks Ed if they can go on a second date. Ed doesn't know what to do, so he talks to Kelly about it, and he says, he's gonna pursue this relationship with his ex-wife's younger counterpart. So they go on a couple of dates, and they make out a little bit, and Commander Grayson is not cool with it, but what can she do? But young Kelly, when older Kelly, this gets confusing to talk about. When older Kelly's like, don't date my ex-husband, young Kelly's like, well, your life is a disappointment, and this really bums me out. I thought I'd be married by the time, that it is now. I thought that I'd be a captain by now. I thought I'd have all these things by now, and you haven't done any of these things, and it really bums me out, and I think you're a failure. And this really bums out Kelly, who goes to talk to Dr. Finn. Dr. Finn says, hey, look at all you've accomplished. Don't be so hard on yourself. But she doesn't like having that kind of thrown in her face, like she hasn't had all of her accomplishments realized. So back on the bridge, we have an incident where the Kalon have found them. There's some Kalon ships that are sort of zooming around, and they're chasing the ORVILLE around. And young Kelly comes up with this idea to hide in the rings of a planet and to douse the ship in water and become a giant ice crystal. And that works, and young Kelly saves the day. And as we're celebrating, John Lamar, he's like, oh, you know what? I found a way that we can send Kelly back. And everything should be all right, except she's going to remember all this stuff. So Dr. Finn decides she's going to wipe her memory and send her back without any knowledge of what's going on. So the ORVILLE sends Kelly back, and the memory wipe seems to be a success. Young Kelly wakes up on the floor of her apartment, as she often did, and receives a phone call from Ed, who is following up the day after their first date. And he asks if they can have another. And then we get the plot twist.
Bum, bum, bum.
Mm-hmm.
How'd I do?
A minus.
I didn't even study.
That's like really good, especially through dabs.
You know what's funny? To be honest, I completely missed the fact that they were dealing with that anti-banana ray. I completely missed that. But in any case,
yeah, it didn't really jump to the forefront, but I recognized the name, Dr. Aranor or something along those lines, and they mentioned that it was his device. I was like, or Dr. Aronov, and once I heard that name, I was like, where's that from? It's from something. And then the weird cone shape of the thing. That's what that is. And I think it's neat that they have that little callback.
Yes, I like that.
To that technology.
Yeah, they're still in the lab working with it, especially like Isaac, who's there, who also had to survive space and time for 700 years.
Yes, I forgot about that. Wow.
True.
We should also point out this episode was written by Windsor musician Tim Swadling, who actually came up with the premise for a local film called, what was it called, Julie?
The Arrow and the String.
The Arrow, yes, The Arrow and the String. So obviously I'm joking, but that movie from Made in Windsor did have a very similar premise where someone hires a private investigator to find their younger self, and the actor in the film, what was his name? Noah what? I don't remember his last name, but he played both versions of himself, and it was, a clever premise. But anyway, I guess these ideas are just floating around in the air, and so someone on the ORVILLE came up with this one, and I think it's a great idea. I think it was a great showcase for Adrienne Palicki's acting. I thought she was great. I think the concept was great. Like, even the idea of her confronting herself and kind of dissing her future self, telling her that she's a failure. Because I've had fantasies about that where I go back in time, or my past self comes back to the present and tells myself how much of a failure I am. So I can relate. So anyway,
Mike, you got to get your shit together. Otherwise, you're going to be doing an ORVILLE podcast for the rest of your life.
So, yeah.
And a Bronze Age spider cast.
Yikes. And another Bronze Age comic book podcast. But yeah, so I thought this episode was really good. I don't know. G.I. Julie, what did you think?
I initially thought this was really cool. I like having sort of a Kelly episode.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not like we get to meet Kelly's family and visit her human background. It's like we just get a shadier 7 years younger Kelly who's wearing a bad wig and too much makeup. Are we going to say what she does at the end?
Oh yeah, of course. You want to say it?
Yeah, who decides that she's not based on what she experienced on the ship after she's been sent back to her own time period. She turns Ed down for a second date.
Mm-hmm. Which leads to the next episode. Will this have
lasting repercussions? Who knows?
Mm-hmm. So, I don't remember though. Okay, so even though Ian just summarized it, so in the end, is it Ed that ends the relationship with young Kelly?
She's getting sent back to her time.
Okay. I don't remember. Oh, geez. I mean, it's been 2 weeks since I watched it and I already forget. And this sounds bad for our audience, but I think it's a great idea. Just the idea of nostalgia and wanting to rewrite the past and redo things. And this episode, I think it just really explores that idea that you really can't, you know? I don't know. I think it's a great premise though. Just trying to integrate herself into the present and with the crew and everything. I don't know. I just thought it was really cool.
I got some vibes from the Star Trek episode Second Chances, where Will Riker was split in two.
Yes.
And he had to try and reintegrate himself into the crew.
Right. I should point out that the writers of Star Trek Next Generation, I think it was Ronald D. Moore, he actually wanted the other Riker to stick around and have
the other Riker did.
Well, no. I mean, our Riker would have died, and alternate Riker would have just taken his place.
Oh,
yeah, like just to make it even crazier, you know. Just
that would have been a bizarre premise,
right?
They should have done that.
Yeah, like why not, right? There's an episode of DS9. I don't know if you remember this, where Miles O'Brien keeps jumping ahead in time by 5 hours and then coming back to the present.
Yep.
And
that's a great episode.
Yeah, it's a great episode. And like he keeps seeing danger, like, and then he has to go back in time and like warn the crew about what's about to happen. But one of the twists
didn't he also save himself like in a fight by he was going to get shot by a Klingon and he broke a chair over the Klingon's head to save his own ass or something like that?
I think so. But but the cool twist at the end, spoiler alert, is that he goes to the future, but he has radiation poisoning, but his future self doesn't. So he's like, well, why don't you go into the past and I'll just stay here? And basically, I think he dies, right?
You're right. He does.
Yeah. And so then 5 hour in the future, Miles O'Brien goes back. And so now for the rest of the series, 5 hour in the future, Miles O'Brien is Miles O'Brien, which is cool, right? It's technically not the same guy. Yeah.
And I think he touches on that as well, that like he kind of feels like he doesn't belong there.
Right.
Even though he's only 5 hours off.
Right. Very cool. So I don't know. Did you guys like Adrian Palicki's acting? Am I pronouncing it right? Palicki? Yeah, I am. Palicki. There you go. Palicki.
She was great. She did a great job of making herself, two different people, and you could really tell the difference between the two.
Yeah, like how do you play a younger version of yourself without feeling judged or extremely self-conscious about it?
Right.
And not only a younger version of yourself, but a younger version of a character that you play on television.
Good point. Yeah.
I could only think of one thing that would be harder, which is something they did in Harry Potter often, but the actors, when they drink polyjuice potion and they turn into other people, they have to play that actor playing them.
Yes, that's right.
And it has to be good. Like when Hermione drinks the Polyjuice potion and becomes Bellatrix Lestrange, technically it's Emma Watson pretending to be Hermione, but also looking like Bellatrix Lestrange. It's like, it has to be nuanced and subtle. And I think she did a really good job. Aside from, and this is the thing, they didn't really need to do the whole hair and makeup thing.
Well, how else would they have showed that she was younger, though?
Less makeup would have been fine.
Less makeup would have been fine. I agree with Jolie on that. And again, I'm going to reference Second Chances, where Will Riker and Tom Riker, they looked identical. The only thing that you could tell them apart with was the color of their uniform. So you do that instead. Something like that, where you differentiate them some other way. You don't, like, young Kelly had so much makeup on that she looked like she was straight out of the 90s. It was a little jarring. It didn't look great. I get it, but...
I was okay with the hair, though. Absolutely okay with the hair.
Oh, yeah. Like, they gave her bangs, which was something usually that younger girls have, I guess. It's a choice, good or bad, that you make in the first year of university. And then you never give up. But apparently, older Kelly gave it up. I like to say future Kelly, because technically, younger Kelly and older Kelly, you could call younger Kelly old Kelly.
You're right. It's... Yeah, the English language is confusing. So anyway, I believe that brings us to the joke section of the episode. Would you guys like to hear the gags that I recorded?
Love to hear them.
Let's just give the context. Ed and Kelly are dating, and at this point, past Kelly and Tala are friends, and they go into the simulator on a date, like a sort of like a everybody date. Wait, is it a date, or are they just like going in there?
No, just hanging out.
Okay, because past Kelly is like, let's go to a nightclub. I'm like 20, between the ages of 21 and 25, and I still want to be in that situation. So everyone goes. Bortus, Clyden, Yaphet, Lamar, obviously.
Yaphet's got some
Yaphet's
moves.
dancing, yeah. You know what, guys? I gotta play it again because that's just the way it is. Because it went back to the beginning. You want to hear it one more time?
Sure.
Because that wasn't the whole bit. Okay, here we go.
This is glorious! The music is very similar to a popular mating song on Mopus. You must come dance with us!
We're okay, but thanks!
The restroom? It is that way. Boys, listen. We must return to the dance! The night is ours!
Yeah, actually, that's the only joke I recorded, to be honest. Whenever they do something physical like that, it's always like, I'm always worried, like, oh, Bortus, don't jump the shark, but he didn't. I think it was still really funny. Hey?
Yeah. June, I was reading something. I really like that they make light of the Mauchlin's like uber masculinity.
Yes.
And they make light of that in order to say something else. Or to highlight how they're like actually kind of pretty cool. Like they love going club hopping, or they have rituals like Jaloja. Because I was reading something about how Star Trek uses Worf and the Klingon to kind of like, they sort of humiliate him in a way in order to show the audience that the foe that they are fighting for, that, you know what I mean, that they have to fight against is like powerful, or that they're a threat. And I was like, I'm glad that this is kind of a sitcom, and like they don't have to do that with Bortus. They use this to show us that, like, even though this is an all-male race and it's actually they're pretty serious, and he's like the only visible, other than Yaphet and a few of the other engineers, alien, that, like, you know, the jokes can be funny. The cultural differences can be entertaining.
Right.
The dancing is wonderful. They're like two
Awesome.
drunk uncles.
I also want to point out the title of this episode, just like any classic Star Trek, comes from Shakespeare. I'll read it quick. It's only 5 lines. Tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow, creeps in this petty pace from day to day to the last syllable of recorded time, and all our yesterdays have lighted fools the way to dusty death. So that's from Macbeth, and I'm sure both of you, if not at least Champion, knows where that second last line gave us a title for an episode, All Our Yesterdays. Are you familiar with that one, Ian?
I'm familiar with that, yes. Was that an original series episode?
Yes, it was the second last episode, number 78. And it was the first episode of Star Trek I ever saw, and it's where Kirk and Spock go back in time, and they're in a... Oh, they go to the library, and there's no one in the library, but they end up going through like a doorway that brings them back in time to prehistoric times, and they're in a cave with this girl. You remember?
I have a vague recollection of that one. That's one of those episodes that I don't think that I've seen since I was a kid.
Ah, okay. It's rock solid. And I think Bones is there too, but it's the first episode I ever saw, so it holds a special place in my heart. Yep. Do you remember that one, Jolie?
I'm reading about it right now.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot to learn about Vulcans in that library, cave library where they find that seemingly modern looking woman in a cave woman's costume.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and you remember the librarian's name? Remember it's Atoz, which is A to Z or Z if you're American.
Oh, come
Mr.
on.
Atoz.
I love it.
So ridiculous. The title, comes from a soliloquy given by Macbeth.
Mm-hmm. Anyway.
So fun. So we'll make sure to put that little... I use it all the time. The gif of Yaphet dancing. To highlight how excited I am by things people say on Facebook. So it doesn't come out often is what I'm trying to say.
That's why I've never seen it before.
Yeah, I'll drop it in our chat.
So, I don't know if there's anything else to say about this episode. Champion, do you have anything else?
I've got... This is just another one of those... Can Ed get any dumber? It's just like he's always stepping in it one way or the other. That's the one thing that sort of I rolled my eyes at this episode. How could he possibly think that it's a good idea in any way whatsoever to date his ex-wife's younger self?
Yes.
Right? And I'm not talking about it's just going to end the same way as it ended before. No, I mean, your ex-wife sits next to you at work. Mm-hmm. Like what if this wasn't a time travel episode and instead she just had a younger sister come on board and they hit it off like, hey, Kelly, you mind if I date your sister? Yeah, she's going to mind. She's going to mind big time. And the fact that it's a younger her, I can't even imagine that he would, like, why would you even ask that? It was one of the dumbest things he's ever done.
Yeah, like, did they even, was there a point where they tried to, like, make a comparison to what Malloy did with the cell phone girl?
I believe it was I think she was referenced.
Because it's like, no, that what you're about to do, what you're suggesting to your ex-wife that you want to do, and then what Malloy did, makes what Malloy did look normal.
Oh, big time. Big time.
That's just
and to draw that comparison, like, oh, Malloy gets to be happy. How come I don't get to be happy? Mm-hmm. You get to be happy, dude. You just don't get to do this.
Yeah, it's like, you're not dating a like, if it was a simulation of Kelly, it would be less weird than you dating the past version of your current wife. Weirdo. Stop. Like, it's actually really creepy.
It is creepy.
Oh, man.
Speaking of Seth MacFarlane, go ahead, Julie.
Well, it's like those Black Mirror episodes where you can grow a version of your dead spouse.
Oh,
I think I remember that. Yep.
Yeah.
That was a weird episode.
Yeah, like, I love Donald Gleason, but like that made me love him as an actor even more. But that was so strange. There's just like there's something odd and untoward about that. Morbid, if you will.
Although another positive part of that episode is that time travel episodes are always tricky, and no TV show ever gets them right. This one at the end there, when they're like, I don't know if this the memory erasure is going to work, and Kelly, I forget if it was old Kelly or young Kelly, is like, you know what? I'm actually not worried, because we're here doing this, so it must have turned out okay. And then everyone just kind of goes like, oh yeah, you're right. And just that sort of like simple logic.
Yeah.
You don't see that in time travel episodes very often. So I like that bit too.
Yeah, and then you think it's gonna work.
But then
But then she remembers, and she doesn't do what she's supposed to do. So what does that mean? That there's multiple timelines? Is that the kind of time travel that Orville is incorporating? I don't know.
I do love that ending though. It was great.
Yeah,
what a way!
it was good.
I like endings, like cliffhanger endings, not necessarily a part 1, part 2 thing, but where you don't even know that it's going to set up something else, so it comes off as a surprise. I really like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I didn't expect that coming in a million years, and you can usually see this stuff coming a mile away. Came out of left field.
Absolutely, and it's going to lead us to our next episode, which is the last episode of Season 2, which we will be reviewing next week, so be sure to join us. Every episode of MORE-VILLE Orville is available at www.comicbooksyndicate.com, so please be sure to join us next week, and then join us again in June for our reviews of Season 3. I want to thank G.I. Jolie and Champion for joining us.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having us.
All right, so until next week, there's more where that came from.